What's going on, Sarasota? My name is Brad Hannon.
Trey Martel.
Felipe Colón.
And we're here in the new Sarasota SpeaX studio. So we're pumped, coming to you from a brand new studio. I don't know if you can tell, but we've got the picture window here. What do you guys think?
Oh, I love it. Big shout out to our producer, Eric. He put a lot of effort into making this all come to fruition.
Producer, studio designer, lighting expert, sound, audio, visual. I mean, the guy does it all.
It's awesome how you can just have a vision, and you don't really understand it. And then once it comes to fruition, everybody's in awe.
Agreed.
Cool.
And shout out to Chris Rich Construction. That beautiful frame you're seeing behind me there is all his custom work. So that was awesome. Also want to quickly shout out some of our other sponsors that helped make this possible. You guys hear about Tominator Law every week on the roundabout section. Shout out to Tominator Law, Tweeds, Custom Suits. If you guys have not checked out the new location downtown, you need to. I now actually own 5 pairs of Tweeds jeans because I said I'm just replacing my whole wardrobe with tweeds, right? By the way, we're looking for sponsors, right? We want to bring more sponsors in now that we've got this new studio, and we're really taking it to the next level. So
we're also in discussions with several sponsors, so more to come on that. It's really exciting that we've got so much support from the community. Just to recap, we've come a long way in the past year. I mean, shout out to the Herald Tribune for doing a great piece on us.
Not a year yet. Not till like June.
Well, it's almost like a season. We're more like a TV show, right? We have seasons.
Yeah, season 2's in the new studio. Yeah. A quick word on the sponsorship, right? How are we positioning the sponsors? How are we? Because it's not just your traditional. So I'll tee it up for you.
Huh? Can you repeat the question, please?
So what I'm trying to tee up there for you, Trey, is that basically, with those sponsorships, it's more brand deals, right? It's not just like the Tominator segment, right? This segment's sponsored by, or hey, this podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. You have a, what I mean? Like we're trying to really bring value and bring partners in that align with the vision.
Yeah, so we really care about our sponsors, and we want them to succeed. We want them to get the value that they pay for, and even off camera, the three of us push the sponsors a lot. And beyond that, I always buy from the sponsors. So if you sponsor the show, there's a good chance I'll buy something.
And a lot of our sponsors have come out of guests because they see what we do here and they see the value in action. And like Trey said, a lot of them are already getting business or getting referrals from other guests or other people that are affiliated with the podcast. So that's been kind of fun to see people who come on the show do business together.
And the people that come on the show are people that we generally, for the most part, one of us has known, liked, and trusted to an extent, and have some sort of relationship. And to do business with people that we know, like, and trust is kind of the way to go. So, with the new studio, I want to kind of open it up to share some vision. Some of this you may have heard. Some of this, I may not have even heard. Right? You may have some ideas. You may have some ideas that we haven't really talked about. But I can tell you that one of the big things that I want to use this opportunity for is to really shed some light on the name Sarasota SpeaX, right? I didn't come up with the name. My man Trey came up with the name. I believe maybe Felipe was about to.
I came up with the name.
All right, so we'll settle the debate in the comments. Who do you think came up with the name? Drop it below. My vote's Trey because that's the first place I heard it from.
I vividly remember coming up with the name and the X on the end, and Flip's like, "Oh no, it might be associated with pornography." I remember.
We would hate that.
The exact conversation.
I vividly remember looking up the idea of Sarasota SpeaX with an X. And it makes a lot of sense because, the way the English language works, the X is actually a real alternative to the KS,
Well, so are you saying that you are a proponent of porn, or you're not?
I am a proponent of
self-love.
Correct grammar.
Oh man. All right. So Sarasota SpeaX, the name itself kind of says it all, right? Sarasota SpeaX, not Brad, Trey, and Felipe speak. Not Brad, Trey, Felipe, and our guests speak, but Sarasota SpeaX, right? So, my goal is that we connect with other local podcasts. We bring them into a network of podcasts. We expand that reach and vision. And I don't know how we make that happen. I don't know. We're just sharing a little bit of vision, a little bit of idea, a little bit of, inspiration to keep going because we're 40 episodes in. 40 episodes. That's crazy, right? It's like 6 months, but 40 episodes. What are we like? 30,000 views a month. roughly across all platforms, 20, 30, 25, okay. I'll exaggerate a little bit, but 25,000 views a month, so pretty exciting stuff.
I was talking with Eric before our episode earlier today, and you know what we kind of dropped the ball on is we're not on Rumble. Remember we originally spoke about being on Rumble? It came to mind because Dave Portnoy was in town with the Rumble guy on one of those clips. So I think we should get the ball rolling on that.
I don't think we dropped the ball. I think we're waiting for Rumble to come to us, right? Okay. I think we're trying to blow up in Sarasota so that they hear of Sarasota SpeaX, and then they're like, dude, you should be on Rumble, right? That's the goal. We're sending emails. We'll blow them up. We'll get them interested. But, that certainly I'm not against. Rumble's solid.
Good. I'll tee you up now. Is there anything exciting coming up for Sarasota SpeaX?
Yeah, so by the time you guys are watching this, we'll be probably a week out from Hometown Fest. So March 30th starts at 12 o'clock, 12 to 5. They've got some great bands lined up. We've got vendor booths and all that stuff. The only reason I know the time so well is because I had to double check that I didn't have a baseball game. And Coach Brad over here. And
Coach Brad.
What do you know? Baseball game's at 12:30. So I'm like, I'm going to get there, set up, have somebody work the booth, go to the baseball game, head right back, and, I'll be out for a little bit. But, excited about Hometown Fest. That'll be the first real event that we're doing. And really it's just awareness, right? Like we're going to maybe have a live podcast going. We're going to get the name out there.
Do you know if they were able to set up all our booths in a row? Because Strong Roofing, Signature Healthcare, and Sarasota SpeaX
Signature Medicare,
yeah.
So I think that we have Signature Medicare, Sarasota SpeaX, and then Strong Roofing on the ends. Our businesses are on the ends. Sarasota SpeaX is in the middle, and then I think even one of our sponsors, Hydrate, will be next to us as well. So taking over, right?
Very cool. Hey Morgan, what is it? It sponsors.
Like kids that are sick or something.
Yeah, there's like Sertoma. Great, like
the kids of Sertoma.
The kids of Sertoma and a couple other awesome organizations.
Yeah,
give out a bunch of beer.
It's good cause, and it's a really good time. It's my favorite event for the year as far as setting up the tents.
And it's outside. UTC.
Good deal. I hope the weather's as good as it was today.
So I want to ask you guys some questions real quick. You guys asked me let's go around because we are often on the podcast. We're trying to highlight the guest, right? But Felipe, we don't talk about what you do a ton. We all know what you do, and you do it really well, and you're very well spoken and very polished on a lot of those things.
I've heard that one before. That's very original, Brad. I appreciate the compliment anyway.
I would say that you are well spoken, right? Like you're very intelligent. There's many.
I think it's tied to racial undertones.
You heard that before?
Never in my life. I've never in my life. We don't always get along. See, we
get along just fine.
You have a very intelligent vocabulary, is what I was saying, and you carry yourself well. Like there's very many times where Trey and I are sitting on the other end of the table. We don't have a single clue what the guest is talking about, and you are.
Well, and vice versa, frankly, you guys are up on the marketing and business building and growth stuff. And frankly, in my industry, we do a lot of that too, but it's just very different.
Well,
boutique firm.
So give me the opportunity. Right. I'm giving you the opportunity here to kind of toot your own horn. Tell us about what you do.
If you don't want to toot your own horn, you can send it this way.
Don't worry, I will. No, I don't really toot my own horn because that doesn't really get you very far in my business. You're often really humbled in the investment business. So the people that are tooting their own horn, they just haven't been through a bear market.
They're faking it till they make it.
Bingo. They haven't been through a bear market. They haven't taken hits. They haven't been battle tested. I've been all that. So I don't need to toot my horn. My returns speak for themselves.
And you're well spoken on top of it. That's great.
I try to be. I'd rather sound.
I can't wait to Google that later.
Listen, I'd rather sound like a smart ass than a dumbass. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I like to read books.
So, teach their own.
Not apologizing for that either.
Well, Trey, nobody here knows what you do, so why don't you share with the audience what Trey does and, a little bit about that.
I'm the fearless leader of Strong Roofing, and I'm excited to announce we actually just bought the building next door to us, so we're expanding. We're building a badass model roof in the showroom, which I'm really excited about. It'll give me an opportunity to train more field reps, and it'll also give me an opportunity to showcase to the customer.
Yeah.
So, a few customers have come in and they're just, it's the real deal. I'm pumped.
So what's cool about this too is we talked about the new studio. We talked about the sponsors. We didn't start with sponsors, right? And the sponsors still don't cover, I would say the half of what we invested in this podcast ourselves and do every month. And so I think it's important, while we're kind of doing this podcast, to share a little bit about the what we've put into it. We don't have to get into dollar amounts and things, but, it goes back to Trey asking me about, doing this podcast, and I said, yeah, let's do it, Didn't realize I was going to add another line item to the expense list, but it's been extremely fun, extremely rewarding. I've met a lot of great people, and I think that we're all excited to continue to invest in it and to continue to grow. So I'll pass it to you, Felipe. You're the investor guy. Why don't you talk a little bit about why we're investing in this and why we think it's important?
Well, I think we all have different areas of focus and lenses that we look at this through, and why it's important to our, number one, our business, but also our personal development, and also, a sense of community, right? This is something that, we don't just do for ourselves. We do because no one else is doing it, and we think it's a value, and we think it's something that one day could be something more and bigger than what we put in.
Yeah.
So I think at least that's what it is for me. But, we all have different businesses, and these businesses have different focus. Interrupt me if I'm going in the wrong direction. But I think for Brad, building his business is really reliant on recruiting good people. To recruit good people, they need to know who you are, right? And I would say since this podcast, a lot more people know who you are. People stop me on the street and say, "Oh, you're Brad's friend who does the podcast."
That's what they say.
I'm meeting tons of people.
Is that what they say to you too?
I've had one in Orange Theory.
I probably met, in the past couple months, I probably met 5 people that are like, one guy was like, "I'm Brad's cousin." You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Someone else said, "I grew up next door to Brad."
No kidding.
I
wonder who that one was.
I raised Brad practically in the neighborhood. I've heard that too. I've heard a lot about you. I hear stuff about Trey too. Great. But in any case, what I'm getting at is, you're getting in front of a lot more people organically that you wouldn't get in front of. And, once people know you and understand you and trust you, they're more likely to feel good about working for you.
For sure.
Right? So that and you want to scale this business to a point, you need good quality employees who buy into your vision. Your vision is on TV once a week.
Well, and it goes back to when Trey originally came to me about starting the podcast, and I know we had it all started here, and then he reached out. He said, "Hey, we're talking about doing this podcast, Sarasota SpeaX. Your content's awesome. How do we do that type thing? Let's grab lunch at Gecko's, right?" So we grabbed lunch at Gecko's. He told me the first sentence, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm in. It's Sarasota. It's a podcast." Previous to this, I did a podcast called Insurance Sucks, the Insurance Sucks podcast. While I had a lot of fun doing it, and it got some traction, it didn't feel the same as doing this in my own backyard. You know what I mean? Like where I grew up, and I started Signature Medicare, a real brick and mortar, agency, right? We're not recruiting agents nationwide. We're recruiting here locally. We're providing jobs, W-2 employment with a base plus commission. It's not, your feast or famine, sink or swim sales opportunity. It's a real, while it doesn't feel like a mom and pop shop anymore with 45 full-time employees, it really, started with me and 7 agents and a vision to have 60, 70 agents in an office that are all making great money and not like starving if they don't make sales that week or if they don't hit their numbers that week. And so not to mention taking care of grandma and grandpa and the client, right? So
I think I've got your pitch down pretty good, because one thing I impress upon people when they ask about what you do is I say, listen, his salespeople all do inbound calls. They're not making calls out.
True.
That's a pretty good differentiator. I've cold called before in my industry. That used to be the standard when you're getting started. But frankly, when you're getting started in my industry, they make you do that because it makes you find better ways to find clients. Because it's so tough.
Do you ever say when someone comes up and says like, "Hey, you're Brad's friend from the podcast," you ever say, "Yeah, he's very well spoken, isn't he?"
That's not usually what I say, but I say, Brad's a good guy. He's a hard worker. He's growing a great business. Something to that effect.
I love it. I
wouldn't say that around you though, because I don't want you to get that impression.
Yeah. They go to my head. Well,
but yeah, I have your pitch down pretty good, and I tell everybody, listen, his agents get paid. They're doing inbound calls. They're not just out there.
We're having some
spending
damn fun
for themselves.
Too. Having some fun.
They all seem pretty happy out there. They all say hi to me and stuff. It's nice.
Well, you're making
Video
me nervous.
games everywhere.
You're making me nervous here talking about myself. So I'm going to flip it back to Trey because he breezed over the new office that he started or office that he bought, and it sounds like cool. You bought a new office, but the build out that he's doing, and it's pretty impressive. So unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to have the B-roll. Maybe we should just do some B-roll to throw it in, throw some shots of the new roofing example and all that stuff, and tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, why don't you let me break down what he gets out of the podcast? Because
Yeah.
I think I know his business pretty well, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
All right. So for Trey, I mean, you have to understand that. I hate that phrase. You have to understand. I feel like that's very patronizing.
Why'd you say it?
Because I just say it, man. Maybe I'm patronizing. But, when you're growing a business the way Trey is, people don't realize that he was the only salesperson in the company doing a pretty healthy amount of revenue on his own, but just back and forth. Then the hurricane came around, and that was an inflection point, right? And at that inflection point, it was, okay, I can't get to all these things myself, but if I bring on people that I trust and I know will do the job right, like how much more can we do?
Yeah.
That turned into from acquiring one additional salesperson to acquiring 7. Now that the hurricane's over, you need to keep those people working. Mm-hmm. So you need to ramp everything up in order to get to a level where that's possible.
And you've done that pretty successfully so far.
Yeah, so it's all about omnipresence and a marketing mix, Mm-hmm. We do everything from the yard signs to the wrap trucks. One of the advantages of buying the place right next door to me is I'll have 2 bright green buildings and I'll have 2 signs, building signs back to back. Now, we talked to Tweeds. He pays $6,000 a month to have something similar, a billboard. Right, but I'll have that built into my property, one-time cost. So
don't put his expenses on blast, because then you'll have every marketing company in the world calling him up to get a piece of that pie.
Yeah, but I can tell you right now that Tweeds is, they're omnipresent for sure.
Yeah,
he's got it going on, so he gets that whole concept.
And I've referenced him to, my company, the people in my company. We want to be, I see you guys everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think we get that because they know, it's not just they see us everywhere, but they know that we're here to stay. You don't want your roof done by someone you think is not going to be around to face the music if something goes wrong. And they can tell, hey, man, the guy owns 2 buildings on a main street. We see him everywhere. He's been in business for 11 years. He's here to stay. He's here to make things right if they're not done right the first time.
Yeah, I think that if I could get a little transparent for a minute and talk actually about the impact that this podcast has had on me personally. Because starting Signature Medicare, call centers, we don't really rely on local marketing efforts, right? We're a national call center, essentially. We're taking calls from basically all 50 states, and we rely more on third-party vendors, third-party marketing companies, or, we do a lot of our marketing internal as well, but it's not the traditional, means of branding versus it's more direct response marketing. And so starting Signature Medicare was I don't care about the logo too much, don't care about the brand. Really it's just about the operation, right? And making sure that our compensation's solid and, our systems and processes are great and, we're training agents well and we're taking care of customers and all that good stuff. And since being on the podcast and since, Wrap Off Wednesdays and Strong Roofing and all of that stuff, I've really made an effort. In fact, I just hired somebody that's going to help with a rebrand and, kind of making our logo pop a little bit more. And who knows, maybe I might even do some corny marketing.
Wrap the car. Wrap the car.
But it's been cool. And that's not even just you, it's just other guests we've had on too. We're learning things where you look at All You Need Pest Control we had on a couple of weeks ago, learned a lot on that podcast. Look at the time with Rich Swire. I have a meeting with him actually, tomorrow him and his business development guy are coming by and talking about some stuff that he's doing. So
yeah, and it's what it's doing for all of us. Obviously, it's opening some doors. We're meeting interesting people. A lot of times, people that are in good positions within our community. So the more people like that, it can't hurt. It can only help.
Yeah.
And who knows what door it might open for you in the future?
You don't. You don't, and it's already opened doors. And the whole point is that we want the same value we want to bring, to the community. Like we want the same value that we're receiving, right? And that's what keeps us going. Like it costs us money. We're not making money. It costs us money. We're maybe if you take out the opportunity from that, we're making money off of it. But it literally costs us money. It costs us time. It costs us attention. It cost me my media guy. Like he's more vested in Sarasota SpeaX now because he's extremely busy with this. So it's taken over some of that. That's one of the reasons why we hired somebody. But it's all for that opportunity. But we're receiving value in other ways, and hopefully we can pass that value forward to the community, and introducing them to all these great companies and entertaining too. Right, that doesn't hurt. We have a blast on the podcast.
I think we have a good time. We all get along.
I was shocked. We had Hosanna Faber, however you say it. Hosanna though, right? Got the first one. Yeah. Faber. I'm always bad with the last names, but Hosanna was like, I would do this all day. Like we had so much fun, right? And that's the experience we want to bring the guests to. So with the new studio, we have, the opportunity for not only more guests, if somebody had, if it was a husband and wife business or, a mom and pop shop, if you will. But we also have the opportunity to allow people to start podcasts, right? Like it's going to cost us some, it's going to cost them some money to use the studio. But if somebody wanted to use the studio, produce content, like I have a vision or an idea for that as well, because then we can, all you really need is the idea to start that podcast. And we have the know-how, right? Or at least most of it. We're figuring out the rest along the way. We're putting this plane together as we fly.
I like that saying.
Fair? Felipe does it. It scares me.
I do like
Felipe,
that
your
saying.
turn to talk.
Listen, I could talk all day. That's beside the point. You said one thing that really struck me, and about the guests, because we talked about the value you get from the podcast personally and with your business, and you as well. Obviously, the visibility is really key, and having that market saturation. For me, it's a little bit different because of the nature of my business. I mean, you guys will never hear the name of the most prominent investment managers in this area because they're not names you would know.
I think you should ask every guest that has a high net value to lunch.
It's just,
if I were in your shoes,
I get it.
I'm like, hey, Victor, great time, man. Let's meet for lunch next week.
You're also assuming that I'm not doing that already. I
do assume that.
An assumption you should not make. But regardless, my point is the value that I get from this is a little different. And it also speaks to our process with the guests, which I think is really where some of the magic occurs on this podcast. When you go through this experience with somebody as a guest, they come in here, sometimes they know one of us or sometimes they don't know any of us. But by the time they leave, we have formed kind of a bond because we've gone through this shared experience. It's a very good relationship accelerator.
Absolutely.
We get to know who each other are and get to a certain level of comfort.
Yeah, it's a weird bond you have with the guest, between the guest and the host, right? Like once they come off the pod, if you ever see them out in public.
Oh, for sure. Your boys.
You're like, whoa, bro. Hey, cheers.
So that's where the value is for me.
Definitely.
Because these are folks that it would take me more time and energy to get to know them on that level. So let's out in the wild.
That's surprising how well spoken you are.
I'm happy to keep surprising you both.
All right, I got an idea. We'll wrap up with this, right? We'll wrap up with each of our favorite guests, right? Our favorite episode,
you stole my question.
It's got to be the important thing is the question's getting answered, right?
I'm up with another question.
Trey, you stole the name, or you stole the name. Listen,
the name was a collaborative effort. I remember the.
So was that question. Me and Trey,
okay.
I could tell what Trey was thinking. So since I'm so well spoken, asked the question.
It's our bond.
It's our bond from doing this 40 fucking times. 40 times. Favorite guest of the podcast can only be one. And there's really no, nothing's off limits. I mean, I'll go first if you want.
This is a tough one, actually.
It is.
I got a couple.
Yeah, but it has to be one.
So the point is getting one, right?
It has to be one.
You got to pick one.
I think my favorite guest was Rich Swire. I think that was my favorite episode.
I think Rich is my favorite.
It's fine if there's
too.
consensus. Like, that's great.
I think Rich is my favorite too.
I mean, that we're going to drive up the views, hopefully. Hopefully you're catching this one and you go check out the one with Rich Swire. I've recommended that one to several people too.
Man, his stories were great. He went for it. He talked out of pocket.
It was more entertaining than this one, I can tell you that.
And he like squinted while he talked the whole time, which I found interesting.
He was the man for sure. So we got a consensus here on that. I think a close second for me would be.
You got to have a different one. Come on now, it's like ordering the same thing to eat at dinner. You know, you got to go.
No, I mean,
different.
it's just that I said it first, so you know, and it was my question.
I thought Terminator Law was good.
My top 5 would be like Gary. Gary's was really good, and it was on location. We had a good time. It was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, Gary's. The thing about it, I think it's the ones that didn't. So like, I know Donald from Tweeds pretty well, right? So like the story and all that stuff, I've known some of that stuff. The ones that were the best for me were really the ones that were like completely shocking. Like, and Gary's wasn't necessarily shocking, but the direction that it went was what made it one of my favorites. That brought us to Midnight Pass and opening Midnight Pass. Then we had the Oyster Boys on. You know, it was that really set the tone for the next couple. Then we had Mike Evanoff talked about opening Midnight Pass.
Dr. Rob
was a great one.
He was a really good one.
You know, a corollary to your question.
What's a corollary? You're too well spoken. I don't even know that word.
An addendum, and an addition.
Oh, okay.
You know. So,
got it.
I understand addition.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
A mortuary to your question.
No. Well, what would be who surprised you the most? You know, I have a good answer.
Fever.
Okay. So my favorite,
100%.
Since you guys asked,
I don't know why, but I just pictured. I don't know why, but I just pictured the CEO of Tervis Tumbler not being like super fun and like exciting, and she was freaking awesome. Like it was a really good time, and she's extremely smart and like. An accountant background, you wouldn't think she's so
personable,
outgoing.
People love stereotyping accountants. I mean, 100%. That's just how it works.
All right, we're ready for your favorite.
Who was let's get Trey's. Who surprised you the most? And I'll give you when I talk. I'll give you my favorite and who surprised me the most. But who was your favorite, and then who surprised you the most?
Well, I think my favorite overall, our best for the podcast guest was Rob Jones, Dr. Rob Jones.
Really?
Well, he was fluid. He was interesting. He brought props. He was engaging.
He brought props. He did bring props.
And he had a following.
He didn't bring donuts, though.
Most surprising. I don't know.
I'm going to take back my answer. My favorite, my favorite.
Let's kick it back to Brad.
No, you're going to love this, though. You're going to love this. My favorite episode was Eric Arroyo. I don't know why, but it just flowed really well. Everything was perfect. Just kidding, Felipe. I'm just kidding. We had to throw in some humor there.
You got to smoke a cigar, and it was in the waterworks. Get to smoke a cigar. I heard that was a fun night.
Oh, that was a blast.
Zinger.
All right, so my favorite, I got to give it to Victor Young.
Yep.
I mean,
definitely one of the top.
He was so good. Well, obviously, Victor's kind of a cheat code with podcasts. He has his own podcast, and he was in the television and media business before that, and he's just done so many different things.
Yeah.
He's had successes and failures, though. You can't cover everything in every podcast, so we'll have to have him back to talk about more of that. But his story is just very, it's just one of a kind, I think.
I was between him and
He's got a lot of
Rich
bass in
Swire.
his voice.
The bass helps. People listen when you got bass.
Who surprised you the most?
Who surprised me the most? You're gonna like
Next
this.
we're doing least favorite guest. No, I'm just kidding.
I know who I'm voting for. Who surprised me the most was probably Grant Talkie.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
We don't do as much. Well, we do some research for these podcasts. Like we put together the show notes. A lot of the guests we know a little bit about, or one of us knows a little bit more about than others. But I like to personally do only a little bit of research because I want to come in fresh, like it's a conversation, like we just met.
That's why I don't study for tests too.
Yeah, so it's like an organic conversation. But for Grant, obviously, we all know Grant a long time, but we didn't know that he was no longer racing at the time we filmed that podcast.
I thought he presented himself pretty well.
Well, that's now not correct
He's back
anymore.
again.
Now he's back.
But
it inspired him.
Yeah,
we were
inspired him.
anticipating talking about racing.
I don't think you'll ever give us credit for it, but I believe we were definitely a catalyst to him getting back in the racing
Well, when he
scene.
mentioned he wasn't racing anymore, we all
Wait, what?
But then, we started talking about his business, and I had no idea how interesting the elevator business is. And that's number one. Number two, and how successful his elevator company was, and the fact that it was homegrown and built right here in Sarasota. Yeah. So that really surprised me.
It really rose to the top.
And we got him a deal out of that one too. We got him a big elevator from that podcast too, didn't we?
Yeah, well, I saw the neighbor, and she waved me down in my community, and she's like, "Hey, do you know a good elevator guy?" And I'm like, "Of course I do."
Yeah, we're Sarasota SpeaX,
subscribe to Sarasota SpeaX. Check this out.
Check out episode number 42. We do.
And Morgan was like, "Don't call Grant. Don't call." I'm like, "Call Grant. He'll take care."
On YouTube, Eric, do we title our episode with numbers? Yeah. So we should get. Yeah, whatever. Oh, his was number 10. See, I was going to say we should get familiar with what episode number they were, because I would have loved to have been like, my favorite was episode 29 with Jim Bob,
Yeah,
we haven't had Jim Bob.
I don't really
yet.
care what
We'd
number the episode is personally, but Grant was great. Another great thing about Grant, like you said, you were able to get him.
We've said enough great things about Grant. So what about somebody else?
You were able to get him that elevator. No, but this is bigger picture stuff, Brad.
Okay, fair.
This is how we do things here, right? I ran into somebody at a trivia I was playing who's a GC, and they have a house they're working on, and they have an out of area elevator contractor. I told him about Grant. He was excited to get his name, get his company, learn more about him, and he's going to want to use him. So that's the kind of stuff that we do here behind the scenes that, it's not just us sitting here wanting to talk in front of the camera. Like, we want to make those connections, and we do. It's just not always something that you hear about on the podcast.
Yeah. Any guests we didn't obviously we did 40 episodes, so we didn't name them all, but I think we talked about All You Need Pest Control. I think we talked about, that one was pretty awesome too, recent, but.
He surprised me the second most, because I had no idea there was so much to that business, and quietly he's built quite a business. So
Tom's was my favorite. Number 2. Tom's was probably my favorite right up until Victor Young, and then and his was my favorite right up until Rich Swire. Mackenzie, that one surprised me quite a bit. She would be top 3 most surprising. We were kind of all we got an MTV Teen Mom coming on. What the frick are we going to talk about? And we didn't have a problem keeping a great conversation going, and it was very entertaining. I learned a lot, and I would even have her back on the show for if one of us is out, a female co-host. She's good. She's got it down.
Whoever came up with the co-host idea, I think that was really great, because that's allowed us to. That was
me, for sure.
Well, I wasn't trying to take credit. I know it wasn't me. That's all. But I think that's been great, because it's allowed kind of some of our guests to step in there and try it out. And some of them have actually founded podcasts since. I know Carolyn Carino, who's guest hosted for us, now has her own podcast that she's been working on.
She should probably use the studio.
Well, that's something we can discuss.
We should bring her into the Sarasota SpeaX fold.
We'll talk. Well, we got lots of things to talk about. We got some more brand deals
Felipe,
on the table.
You got so much to talk about, buddy. Your list is piling up, brother. You got to get to it.
Brother.
What else is new?
All right, should we wrap it up? 35 minutes.
I'm just getting going. What are you talking about?
So one of the things we really want to do with Sarasota SpeaX is we would love to get a roundabout named after us. I think this is Trey's idea originally. I don't want to steal it, because Trey gets upset when we steal his ideas, but a roundabout named after Sarasota SpeaX. So who knows how to get a roundabout named after Sarasota SpeaX?
If you know who we need to speak to in order to get a roundabout named after Sarasota SpeaX, drop their names in the comments or give us some guidance.
Or just a breadcrumb that we can follow.
So the city has this public art fund, right? And the way this art fund gets funded, when people do renovations to commercial buildings, part of the permitting process is they need to kick back money into that fund. How do I know this? Well, when my previous employer redid their office, corporate called down and said, we can't finish the building because we think they're asking us for a bribe. And they didn't know what this additional fee was for. And it was for the public art fund. They had to eventually just pay it, but they were really annoyed that they had to pay this fee.
Is it a lot of money, you think? Or
yeah, on a big build out, sure.
Jeez.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
How does this relate to roundabouts?
Every public piece of art in the city has to go through that public art committee.
Are we saying the roundabouts are public art?
Correct. Anything inside the roundabout is a piece of art. All those things they put in the middle.
Yeah, but the roundabout itself is not public
Well,
art.
how else would we have one named after us? Like, the only thing on there is the only thing in the middle of the roundabout is a piece of public art.
So now you're an artist.
Well, no, I mean, I would think the way we do it is we find an artist who's willing to integrate,
Make a statue
Build a
of us.
sculpture. I like where your head's at. I'm on
to
board
integrate
now.
a Sarasota SpeaX logo or Sarasota SpeaX oriented piece of art into a sculpture, and then it would have to pass that committee.
Yeah, that would be great.
As usual with government, it's a process.
Yeah. Well, or I mean, listen.
Or someone's going to leave us a breadcrumb in the comments.
Yeah, if anybody's got a better idea,
What
I'd
I
love
mean
to
by
hear it.
breadcrumb is give us a tip on somebody that's an expert on roundabouts, right? Because let's be real. We're probably not going to get a fucking roundabout named after us, right?
Well,
but it would be cool to have conversations with people that might be able to make that happen. And they also would be experts on one of our favorite topics. So it works.
very good. When you're thinking about guests to come on Sarasota SpeaX, we're not limiting ourselves to Sarasota itself, but Sarasota and the surrounding areas and anybody of interest that might be visiting Sarasota. I think that would work too, right,
That's
Brad?
true. Yeah. We have had a conversation with, haven't had a conversation with him, but have had a conversation with somebody that was going to be in Sarasota that we might be able to get on the podcast. That would be a major celebrity. So, yeah, that's opening too. But like Sarasota,
If you
Manatee,
vacation here,
Fort Myers,
if you have your summer home here, if you do business here, we're open to having talks to basically anyone associated with Sarasota.
Anyone that's got a connection. I mean, I think one of our better guests was also Chris Hansen.
True.
Who was homegrown
Born
out of
out here,
Sarasota, but kind of made his money in Orlando. And that was a great story. We got to reminisce about the old valet days, which is becoming a popular topic on the podcast as well.
Plenty of valets in this town.
To all our listeners, whether you watch us on YouTube or Instagram, we're just so pumped that, we have a following in Sarasota, and we hope we're providing you guys some value and some insight on businesses, the artistic, the nonprofits. And I just want to say thank you so much for making all this possible. And I think Felipe has a few more things to say.
Always. Thanks, Trey. When I meet you guys out in the community, people are always telling me how much they like what we're doing, and we really appreciate that. But one thing we also appreciate, we're figuring this out as we go. If you have any negative feedback or things that we could do better or things that you want to see, drop those in the comments below as well, because we really want to make this something of value for you, because it's already a value to us. So
Absolutely. And you guys pretty much said everything that I would say. We're just a couple of actually more than a couple. We're a handful of, guys that are figuring it out. They're just having fun doing it. I was fortunate enough to have a media guy that, knows his shit to be able to kind of make this happen. And, it wouldn't happen without Trey or Felipe's idea, which remains to be seen whose idea that was. But, we're just having a blast doing it. I'm meeting a lot of great people, and, it's not supposed to be taken too seriously. It's like we're having a good time and we're meeting great people and we're sharing that with the community. So we want to know who you would like to see on. We want that negative feedback. We love the positive feedback. Trey loves to be spotted out in town. So if you have seen him, or if you do see him with his strong roofing shirt on, be like, hey, you're that guy that's on Brad's podcast, aren't you? Because they love that.
Way to cap it off. All right, guys.
But thanks for everything, and stay tuned for more.